I have assistant managers, hourly managers, supervisors, ushers, concession area, cashiers. I have servers, bartenders, what we call runners, people that run the food out in the Bistro, and kitchen staff, including an executive chef, cooks, line cooks, prep cooks, dishwasher help.
How do you handle security issues there within the cop theater?
Case-by-case basis, depending on the situation, it's case-by-case.
And meaning case-by-case, is that something that you would handle yourself? Is that something that the ushers would handle? How does that security measure get enforced?
It's something that our ushers would handle depending on the situation, along with managers as well. You know, accelerating up to possibly outside forces as well, like police force and something like that.
Okay. At times you actually hire off-duty police officers?
That's correct.
Is that primarily on the weekends?
Correct.
Now, in order to get into the Cine Bistro area of that theater, what would you have to do? The Cine Bistro areas of it.
When you come in the main doors, there's a stairway to the left, and there's also an elevator that would bring you up to the Cine Bistro area.
Okay, so that is a separate and distinct area from the general area
Yes.
where the general population would go to watch a movie.
That's correct.
And I guess I'm calling it general, what do you call that?
Well, we have Cine Bistro guests, and I guess you call it the general population, general guests.
Good guess on my part. Okay, now, in that theater, we're going to talk about obviously Theater 10 because that's the focus of this particular case. In Theater 10, are there security cameras?
Yes, there is. Upstairs in the Cine Bistro only.
Okay, and so if I'm seated in the general section of the theater and I am looking at the screen, where would the cameras be?
If you're sitting, I'm sorry.
If I'm seated in the general area,
General area.
I know there's one up high to the
behind
right
you.
and another one up high to the left, is that
They'll
correct?
be up behind you to the right and left, correct?
Now, those cameras carry or cover predominantly the Cine Bistro area, is that correct?
Those cameras in general, yes.
But they do cover some of the general area as well.
Yes, yeah, there's some limited view as well.
Now, other than knowing that those cameras are there, you have a room there in your complex
Yeah.
that allows you to record what's taking place in those particular cameras onto a DVR and allow you to obviously go and manage that as well.
Yes, we do.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 46. I'm going to take you through a series of photos that I'd like you to look at and see if they fairly and accurately depict that room. What do you call that room? The room with the DVRs?
Projection IT office.
The projection IT office. Okay, let's start off with CE3A 5620 JPEG. You recognize that particular photo?
Yes, that is the projection IT office.
And does that fairly and accurately depict that office as it appeared in January, specifically January 13th of 2014?
Maybe new carpeting on the floor, but yes.
Okay. CE3A 5621 JPEG. Take a look at that particular photo. Does that fairly and accurately depict that particular room?
Yes.
Okay. And so, since that is your projection IT office, does that particular room and that equipment that you see in that particular room allow you to go into that room and view what is being captured on the cameras in the individual theaters?
Yes.
Okay. And please explain to the court how that takes place.
Well, we can go into that room and we can look at live video feeds of the certain areas, and/or we can also look at recorded video feeds. And we can look at different speeds of it as well. We can speed it up, slow it down, still frame it to depict what we're looking for.
So how would you do that if you had a particular time sequence that you wanted to view, for example, in Theater 10?
We would go back and look in the log, and in the log, we would have timestamps next to it, and it'll give us a general idea of what we can click on and say, okay, we're gonna look at this timestamp.
And so you could pull up that particular timestamp, and you can look at the video as it plays. You can slow down the video to a slower playing speed, you said, and then you can look at individual images.
That's correct.
And tell the court how is it and why you're able to do this. What's the function of that?
It could be, again, with security on a case-by-case basis. We were looking for something, possibly, somebody taking a popcorn or something like that. We can go back and look at it. If we're looking at an unruly guest or anything along those lines, we can look at this video and determine what's going on. If we're looking for somebody possibly recording a movie as well.
And do you use that process often?
Yeah, I mean, we use it, frequently.
Okay. Now, you have the ability to do the same thing that you can do in this particular room elsewhere as well, correct?
Correct, in the general manager's office.
Please tell the court where the general manager's office is and how it is that you're able to do that from that office as well.
It's downstairs in the main theater, off to one of the hallway sides. And we have a PC there that's linked up to it as well, so that way we can pull up the live feed as well as the recordings of it.
So if someone came up to you and you were downstairs working, either at the front counter or what have you, and they asked you, Mr. Peck, I'd like to see some video of a particular time in a particular theater, could you do that?
Yes, I mean, clarify with just some random person on the street, no, we would not, but...
A law enforcement officer?
Yes.
Okay, that's an easy answer, correct?
Yes.
CE 3A 5622. Is that the same room?
Yes, that
Is it
is.
fairly inaccurate to depict what that room looked like in January the 13th of 2014?
Yes.
CE 3A 5623. Same question?
Yes.
Same answer?
Yes.
CE 3A 5624. Same question?
Yes.
Same answer?
Yes.
They fairly inaccurately depict what it looked like in January 13th of 2014.
Yes, sir.
CE 3A 5625.
Same. Yes.
CE 3A 5626.
Yes, sir.
Fairly inaccurately depicts. CE 3A 5627.
Yes, sir.
And CE 3A 5628.
Yes, sir.
Now, in addition to you being able to view the videos, both upstairs and now downstairs as well, is there another office or another entity within the Cobb Theater enterprise that is able to do the same offsite?
Our corporate office can as well, our IT department.
And would you tell the court where your corporate office is at?
Our corporate office is located in Alabama.
And so how is it that they can view what you can view there at the Cobb Theater?
They could dial in remotely.
Okay. And that's something that they can do remotely as well as you can?
Yes. I can't dial in from outside the company, but they can.
But they can?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's give the court a little bit of an idea of how the movie theater itself runs in reference to commercials, previews, and then the actual movie.
Okay.
How is the commercial part of it? When you first go into a theater and the previews are not yet playing, but the commercials are, how does that operate within your system there at the Cobb Theater?
We would have 30 minutes prior to showtime. Let's say showtime was 1:30 or 2 o'clock. So at 1 o'clock or 1:30, that NCM, which is National Cinema Media Marketing, would take over, and you would have commercial advertisements up on the screen. They can run anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes in length, but basically the entire 30 minutes is NCM commercials.
And so they're controlling that.
Correct.
You're not controlling it.
No, we do not.
And so, tell me what the lighting conditions are for the commercial.
They're not, I mean, our full lights would be called our usher lights, which is basically fluorescent lights on. Basically our house lights, or less than house lights, are just a little dimmer than the normal lighting.
Okay. And so you're sitting there, you're watching the commercials.
Mhm.
What happens after the commercials are completed?
After commercials are completed, we'll have a couple PSAs, public service announcements, that'll come up on the screen, including a don't record one, to prevent people from recording the movies. Basically, it says something along the lines of, this is annoying, showing somebody on a cell phone, this is showing somebody doing something else, then this is illegal, showing somebody trying to record a movie. After that, we'll have another PSA, which will go into, it could be an advertising for Bistro or something like that, but then we'll go into another PSA. The last PSA we'll show before the previews will be Cobb Theater logo, no cell phones, please put away cell phones, and discontinue texting.
Now, that portion of the discontinue cell phone use, no texting, takes about how many seconds to play?
About 30 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay, and when that's played on your screen, is it pretty clear to everyone what your policy is at that point in time?
Yes, if they're in a theater time, yes, it should be.
Why is that a policy that is obviously enforced there at the Cobb Theater?
It's something we want to do to provide a great experience. I mean, we want to prevent interference from the outside. We want to prevent any other noises. We just want to provide a wholesome experience.
To whom?
To our guests.
To your guests. Okay, and so you try to make that very clear from the very beginning before the preview.
Correct.
Okay. Now, tell the court what sort of enforcement process you use in an effort to make sure that now this policy that you've made clear to everyone is going to be adhered to.
We would have an usher go around and do theater checks throughout the auditoriums at different times. They would have an usher schedule. They would look it over, see what time movies are starting, and they would walk up and down in the theaters and do theater checks to prevent that.
And so what is the policy there at the Cobb Theater if someone is, for example, have their phone on their hands and it's on?
We would politely ask them to put it away. Usher would.
Okay, so the usher would then go to that particular patron directly and converse with him about the fact that he had his phone on?
Yes, that's correct.
Because that was a violation of your policy?
Correct.
And a violation of making sure that the experience for everyone is great?
Correct.
Okay, what if an individual has a phone and they're actually texting?
It doesn't make a difference. Whether the phone's out, we would ask them to please put the phone away at that time.
Okay, for the same reason?
Correct.
And what if the individual says, I'm not going to do it?
At that point, the usher would call for a manager. The manager would go in and ascertain the situation and then do the same approach.
What if you come in and they say, sorry?
We would ask the guests to leave. If they refuse to leave, then we would contact the authorities.
To remove them physically?
Correct.
And that's your policy there at the Cobb Theater?
Yes, we have a very strict policy on that, absolutely.
How long has that policy been in place?
For years. I mean, as long as I've been there.
As long as you've been there?
Correct.
Is that an important policy for the Cobb Theater?
Absolutely, yes.
Now, what if a patron comes to you and says, someone's using the phone? Would you tell that patron, hey, just move?
No.
And why not?
Patron has every right to the seat they chose in there for their experience. I mean, if they chose a certain seat, it's their right to sit there.
You want that patron to have the same great experience?
Yes.
And so you would not tell that patron, hey, just move?
No.
And I would imagine you train your employees not to tell the patrons, just move.
Exactly, yes.
Are your employees trained on these policies independently from someone else, or are you the one that's providing the training as well for all your employees?
They're providing the training from my management team.
From your management team?
Correct.
So obviously you've trained your management team and your management team trains them.
That's correct.
And so really all of your employees know these rules. They're not rules that they're not familiar with.
Correct.
Everybody's familiar with these rules.
Yes.
On January the 13th of 2014, that mid-afternoon 1:20 period, what movie was playing in Theater 10?
Lone Survivor.
What is that showing normally called?
A matinee.
And what's a matinee?
Matinees prior to 4 o'clock and earlier. It's usually a slower show, less guests.
Okay. Are normally those guests there at the Cobb Theater at that matinee normally older individuals?
Yeah, it varies. It varies depending on the time of year, the day, weekends, etc.
And so Lone Survivor was playing. And where would you be positioned that day at about 1:20 plus?
I probably would have been at the guest services desk.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit number 45 and ask you to take a look at this particular exhibit that's showing. It has a date of 1/13/2014, time 13:25:49, and it has a VTS number of 011VO8, and ask you if you recognize that particular exhibit.
Yes, I do.
And does that exhibit reflect a time and date of January the 13th of 2014 when you were at the front counter of the Cine Bistro?
Yes, it does.
Does it fairly
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Not the Cinebistro, we go to 16
Excuse me,
here.
the Cobb Theater?
Correct.
And does that fairly and accurately reflect that?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, at that time, that matinee time, was the Cine Bistro open or closed?
It would have been closed.
And so if you can identify for me the individuals that you see in those particular photos.
The female guest was a guest I was interacting with at the time, talking to her about, I think she wanted some movie posters or something.
Okay, for her children?
Yes, I hope so.
And did you ask her there during that conversation to give you a list of the photos or the posters that she wanted?
I probably would have, yes.
Okay. How long was that conversation between you and this young lady?
It was, I would say, more than a minute, almost 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, maybe more.
Okay. And during that particular time that you were conversing with her, do you recognize the gentleman that is to the far right in that particular photo?
I do now, yes.
And who is that gentleman?
I believe Curtis Reeves.
Okay. And was Mr. Reeves there at the counter waiting for you to finish your conversation with this young lady?
I assume so.
Okay. You weren't paying attention to him?
Correct.
Focusing on your conversation?
Yes, I was.
At any point in time, did Mr. Reeves, while you were conversing with this young lady, at any point in time, did he interrupt you?
Not that I recall.
Did you see anything in reference to Mr. Reeves that day at that counter that caused you any concern concerning his emotional being? Was he mad? Was anything of that sort?
Not that I recall.
Let's go to the next one. I'm going to show you now again another photo, 1/13/2014 at 13:26:07. with a VTS number of 011VOB and ask you if you recognize that particular photo.
Yes, I did.
And that, what is that a photo of?
Appears to be a photo of me sitting at the desk and I assume paying attention to Mr. Reeves.
Okay. And this young lady has now moved a little bit further to the right?
To my left, her right, yes.
Yeah. And was she writing down the posters that she wanted you to try to seek for her?
I assume so.
Okay. And so that fairly accurately depicts what was taking place there at the scene of Bistro somewhere post 1:20 that day.
Yes, that's the guest service at the Grove 16, yes, that depicts it.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point in time, we would like to introduce both defense exhibit number 45 and defense exhibit number 46.
Judge, we have no objection.
Where are we on, 23?
46 would be first. 45 would be second. You can put it on the back. Oh, really? No, I was just saying, because it's a label, you can, it's clear on the back.
No, I understand that, but eventually I'm going to have to add another label.
Ah, I get you, okay. Can I keep going, Your Honor, while she's doing that?
Yes, what was depicted on those? All,
46 was the DVR room, 45 was these pictures right here that the court has seen.
okay, thank you.
Now, tell the court what you remember of the conversation that you had with Curtis Reeves there at that counter.
I don't recall anything.
Recall any anxiety or any concern on your part that Mr. Reeves may have been mad or anything?
Not that I recall.
And so what happens after Mr. Reeves comes and leaves?
Seemed like a brief time after that, somebody comes running out of the auditorium 10 and screams, call 911. He shot someone, he shot someone.
Okay. Now, Mr. Peck, tell me what you do at this moment.
At this moment, I'm trying to dial 911 on the landline. I'm not having success. It just keeps ringing and ringing. Felt like forever. And then I also realized that I needed to move around and could not be laying locked down to a landline. So I grabbed my cell phone and decided to call 911 for my cell phone.
Okay. And did you?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And were you able to reach 911?
Yes, I was.
Okay. What are you doing with your phone as you're calling 911? Are you still stationary there at the front desk, or are you moving somewhere else?
I'm starting to move towards auditorium 10. Guests at this time are leaving the theater. Some are running around concession areas, some are upset, some are panicked, and they're heading towards exits. Some are just sitting down. I'm trying to calm guests down. I'm walking through the crowd trying to calm them down.
Now, you go into the theater 10. Please describe to the court where you go.
I walk into the auditorium, and there's two ways you can go. You can go straight in, or you can go to the left around the other side of the auditorium. I go straight in the auditorium, head towards the screen, take a left, and take another left to go up the stairs.
So if you're looking at the screen of the theater, you would be going up the stairs that are to your right.
If I'm looking at the screen, there'd be the stairs to my, yeah, furthest to the right, correct.
Furthest to the right.
Right.
And so you go up those stairs,
Correct.
and where do you go?
I go up towards the stairs, towards the top.
Okay, and as you're going up the stairs, what are you able to see?
I can see a person laying on the floor. I can see my maintenance person, James Redfern, over top of him, along with somebody else performing CPR. And I see a gentleman sitting up in the back row with another gentleman with his hand on his shoulder.
Okay, and the gentleman that you saw seated in that back row, do you see that gentleman here today?
Yes, I do.
And who is that gentleman?
Curtis Reeves.
Okay. You notice anything about Mr. Reeves other than he was seated there quietly?
At one point, it looked like when I was up there on the phone, he was wiping his brow. And but just sitting there.
And when you're saying wiping his brow, you meaning his hand
Yeah, he
was?
was wiping his forehead, brow.
Okay. And so what do you do at this point in time? You still have the cell phone in your hand?
Still have a cell phone.
Tell me what you do.
I'm still talking to 911. They're asking me to ascertain the situation. They're asking me if the gun has been detained. Asking if, the shooter and or the gun has been detained. Somebody screams out that it has been. And then I'm just sitting there watching and talking to the 911 at the same time. They ask me if the shooter's still there, and I say something along the line, the assailant's still here, or something like that.
Okay. And when you said to 911, the assailant is still here, what happens?
Mr. Reeves says something along the lines of, I'm not the assailant, or watch who you calling the assailant, I'm not the bad guy, something along that lines, I don't recall exactly.
Objection is to hearsay, Judge.
It's an excited utterance.
Judge, can we approach?
Do we need to, or because the witness?
Well, it's a defendant's statement, number one. It's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Number two, it's not admissible, Judge, unless the defendant testifies, and the defendant can testify and testify to his statement himself.
Judge, it is classic excited utterance. What Mr. Garcia doesn't realize is that excited utterance doesn't have to happen immediately when the startling event takes place. In fact, there is case law that says that excited utterances could be introduced far beyond the actually exciting event. And clearly that is what's happening here. Everybody's real excited. He's talked about everybody being real excited. People are yelling out, we've got the gun. He comes into the theater and he makes the statement, and Mr. Reeves says, I'm not the assailant. I'm not the bad guy. Like, that's classic.
Response.
Judge, I disagree. I mean, the thing is, if he had said it immediately, some time has already passed by. And now he's saying, I'm not the assailant, I'm the victim.
Judge, I can cite Harmon versus State 850.
I'm aware of the
Okay.
case law. Your excited utterance can be, occur at some time after the event, not typically a long time after the event, but this is still within the realm of the scene and overall.
Judge, I'm going to object to improper predicate. He hasn't laid a predicate to get that statement in. We don't know how much time elapsed. We don't know when it was said. He needs to lay a proper predicate if he's intending on trying to introduce that statement.
This witness has indicated that he's on the telephone at 911. I'm assuming that that's very close in time still.
Judge, with all due respect to the court, I wouldn't assume anything in this case.
All right, I'll grant you that one, State.
Judge, I've laid the predicate. He's talked about someone coming running out immediately.
Let's
He did-
try to get an exact estimate of time, seconds, minutes.
Okay. Mr. Pack, how much time lapsed between the time that Mr. Reeves left your front office or front desk there and the time that you first hear someone coming out saying he shot someone?
Unfortunately, I don't recall exact timing, I'm sorry.
Well, are we talking about minutes, or are we talking about hours?
It wasn't hours, it was minutes.
Okay. And so the minute that you hear someone saying he shot someone, do you quickly go into that theater?
After I was at the guest service desk, called 911, couldn't get through, hung up the phone, and went there as quickly as I can in between talking to guests and the way through.
Short number of minutes?
I would be guessing, but yeah, I guess.
I mean, you're not going to be waiting there at the desk.
Objection is to leading.
Are you going to be waiting there at the desk for a long period of time?
No, I will not.
And so you went into the theater with phone in hand, talking to 911.
Objection is to leading, Judge.
He's already testified to that, though. Yeah.
Rephrase.
Did you go into the theater with your phone?
I left the desk and I went to the theater talking to guests and ascertaining the situation on the way.
And who were you talking to on the phone? as you were going?
911.
911. Did you stop anywhere to go to an office or the bathroom or anything, or did you go straight into the theater?
No, I mean, I was stopping interacting with some of the patrons on the way in, but not, I wouldn't say for an extended period of time, I was not stopping.
Okay. You went into the theater, went upstairs,
Yes,
and that's when you had this conversation?
yes.
Good enough.
Okay. Now, so Mr. Reeves makes this statement, either I'm not the assailant or I'm not the bad guy, something to that effect.
Something along that line, yes.
Okay. Do you notice anything about the straight facial expressions that gave you any concern?
No, he was just sitting there.
Just sitting there. Do you say anything else?
Not that I could hear.
Okay. And so what do you do now? You're there, you've got your phone in your hand, you've spoken to 911. Where do you go from here?
Still with 911 back and forth, talking to him about the victim in this case and their well-being, not knowing what it is. At that time, I'm moving down the stairs, walking around the theater, the auditorium, and then once I see that the local authorities have taken over, I kind of just move up towards the lobby area.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about the lobby area. There were patrons inside the theater that day. Have some of those patrons come outside the theater?
Yeah, some are sitting out in the concession area at the cafe tables.
Describe to the court what you mean by the concession area and the cafe tables.
When you exit one of our auditoriums, you go towards the center part of the theater area. There is a concession area where we serve popcorn or drinks, and there's some small tables there as well where the people sit and enjoy their time before they leave or come in, either way.
And what's your estimate of the number of people that were there?
Not to be vague, but a lot. I mean, 30, 40, 50, I would assume somewhere around there.
And what were those people doing as they were there in the concession area?
Some were just sitting around, some were just, sounded like they were talking to each other, and some were just panicked, some were upset, some were crying for obvious reasons, and they were just, and I had my employees handing out drinks and popcorn to try to console and calm people down as well.
Were any police officers there at the time?
Yes, there was.
Okay, who was there? Do you know who? And I'm talking about the concession stand, concession area.
Right. There was a mixture of in uniform and out of uniform police officers.
Now, did you hear any of those police officers make any statement to this group to not discuss what they had seen in Theater 10 amongst themselves?
Not that I recall hearing.
Did any police officer give you any instructions to give others not to discuss their testimony with anyone else there in that theater?
Not that I can recall.
Now, did you ever have a conversation with any law enforcement officer concerning your video surveillance system?
Can you clarify?
Yeah, that day.
Okay.
That day, once the officers were there, did you have a conversation that day with officers concerning your video surveillance system and what was on it?
I don't think I had anything directly with anybody. It was just outside of a couple of my employees asking me that people were asking around about video. And I said, yeah, we would have video available.
And those employees, would those have been James Redford and Melvin Baez?
Yes, and correction, his last name's Redfern, F-E-R-N.
I've done that before. Okay, and so you told your employees, imagine they would know as well, hey, we've got, some video, right?
Correct.
Judge, I'm going to object this to leading.
Did any police officer come to you and say, I want you to take me and show me the video in Theater 10?
Not that I recall, no.
Had an officer come to you and said, I want to see the video that you have in Theater 10, what would you have done?
I would probably be, depending on what I was doing at the time, I would contact my corporate office and make sure we can allow the video to be seen and release it.
Okay, and so how would you go about doing that? Would you go up to your DVR room?
Yes, correct.
And you would find the time log,
Correct.
and then what would you do?
We would review, based on the camera, what we want to look at, what the person would directly want to see.
Okay. And if that police officer wanted to have a thumb drive to keep it, could you do that?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know if I can record directly off my PC.
Okay. So is your PC a regular PC?
Well, the one upstairs, I've never actually tried recording off with a thumb drive, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. So you don't even know if it has a thumb drive slot?
It does, I assume, but yeah.
Okay. Could you have done the same thing from your office downstairs?
Viewed it, yes. Yeah, the passes as well.
And so if they would have made this request, certainly you would have made the request to your office, is what you're saying, your corporate office.
Correct.
Now, were you having conversations with your corporate office during this time period?
Yes, I was in and out of touch with my corporate office with various people, talking about the situation, letting them know what was going on the scene at the time, depending on the time of where I was, etc.
And were they accessing your DVR system?
Yes, one of our IT people was accessing it, yes, Eric Andrew.
And the fact that someone was accessing your DVR system, would that have prevented you from going upstairs and viewing these videos?
No, that wouldn't prevent it from me, no.
Would that have prevented you from going into a downstairs office and viewing this video?
I don't believe so, no.
Now, did you ever tell law enforcement that, by the way, who interviewed you? Which law enforcement officer interviewed you? Let's go there first.
I don't recall.
Was it a long interview or was it a brief interview?
There was a lot going on that day, I really don't recall. There was talking to people left and right, trying to ascertain the situation, trying to keep people calm, moving people around, people asking me to use rooms. I don't recall who was who, unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you ever explain to law enforcement that day that Mr. Reeves had come to your front desk and had a discussion with you?
Not that I recall.
And would you tell the court why you didn't tell law enforcement?
At the time when there was a lot going on that morning, I had a conversation going on with one of our linen companies about them saying that our doors were left unlocked from the cleaning crew the night before when they weren't. I had a maintenance issue with my James Redfern. He had a sink that he was trying to replace the spigot on. I remember I was involved in that conversation, which was an extended period conversation, as well as the woman that came up to the counter and asked me about posters and stuff. Basically, I was just involved with all those other conversations, and then the interaction, I really just don't recall it happening.
So the interaction you're saying with Mr. Reeves was not significant enough where you remembered it?
No, it wasn't. In fact, I didn't realize I had interaction until it was shown later.
When you went into the theater and you saw Mr. Reeves sitting there, have you described Mr. Reeves as an older man?
Yes.
When you saw Mr. Reeves there, you didn't know his name at the time when you went upstairs, correct?
That's correct.
So when you saw this older man sitting there in the chair who made that statement to you when you said the assailant is here, did you even recognize that that was an individual that had just been earlier to your desk to discuss this issue?
No, because I didn't recall the interaction.
Now, who flew in that night from the corporate office?
That would be Fred Myers.
And do you recall when it was that law enforcement was given a copy of the video or at least a portion of the video from camera from Theater 10?
The exact timing, no, I do not.
Certainly not on January the 13th of 2014.
I don't assume they were, no.
You believe it happened sometime thereafter?
I assume so, yes.
And do you know how long thereafter?
No, I don't. It would have to be while Fred was there.
How long was Fred there?
I believe he was there 5 to 7 days, somewhere on that, almost a week.
Now, the following day, which would have been, what day would the 14th have been?
The day of the week?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you open that next day?
We did not open the next day, no.
You did not open the next day. The doors were closed because of this incident.
Mhm.
So if law enforcement wanted to be there, you would have allowed law enforcement to be there to do their job.
Correct.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
You can pass the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel. Mr. Peck, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Peck, you would agree with me, would you not, that January 13th of 2014, that specific day impacted your life, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
In fact, it was very traumatic for you, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Olson lost his life, correct?
Yes, sir.
Nicole Olson was shot in her hand.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reeves was arrested for second-degree murder.
Yes, sir.
Those are very significant events, wouldn't you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
And you indicate that on January 13th of 2014, you were at the guest services test, correct?
Correct.
And that Mr. Reeves came up to you, correct?
Correct.
You would agree with me that because of these events, you would have memorialized this, correct?
The events, yes.
Did you write notes?
No.
You didn't write any notes.
No.
Prior to today, you reviewed that video though, didn't you?
Once or twice.
Okay, and you were able to identify Mr. Reeves, right? Even though you had never seen him before, correct?
Identify him by name?
You identified him in the video and said, yeah, that's Mr. Reeves. And then in court today, you were able to identify him and point him out and go, yeah, that's Mr. Reeves,
Correct.
right? And is it your testimony that you do not recall what Mr. Reeves told you when he came to the desk?
Yes, sir.
You have no independent recollection of that.
Not that I recall, sir.
Well, isn't it true that he didn't tell you, I'm in fear? Did he?
I don't recall what he said, sir.
Did he tell you, I'm afraid?
Again, I would be speculating to answer.
Okay. Did he tell you, call the police? I've been assaulted.
Object. He's already said that he doesn't remember anything. I think at this point in time, it's really badgering this witness who obviously has had a hard time with this incident.
Judge, I need to explore this and I need to see what he remembers, because other things he remembers clearly, but when you get to the specific conversation with Mr. Reeves, he has no recollection at all.
Judge, exploring is one thing. Badgering this witness is a completely different thing that is totally inappropriate.
Oh,
Judge,
no. Oh,
Mr. Peck, did Mr. Reeves tell you, call the police, things are really getting bad in the theater?
Not that I recall. If somebody would have said something like that, I probably would have reacted so accordingly.
But he didn't, right?
Not that I recall.
Did he say that the gentleman that was in the theater was cursing at him?
Not that I recall.
Did he say that the gentleman in the theater had come and had climbed over the seats towards him?
Not that I recall.
In fact, after you had this conversation with him, he went back into the theater, didn't he?
Yes.
Did you ever see Mr. Reeves at that front desk with his wife? Did he take his wife with him?
No, sir.
Did you even know his wife was there?
No, sir.
Now, you indicate that you were very forthright and forthcoming with law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever tell them that they could view the video that day?
I really don't recall, I'm sorry.
You don't recall that?
Right.
Do you recall being spoken to by Detective Basson? Mr. Peck, isn't it a fact that Detective Basson asked you, can we please see the videos? Do you remember that conversation you had with Detective Basson?
No, I don't. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't recall. There was a lot going on that day.
Isn't it true that you told Detective Basson that we are already in contact with technical department and we're in the process of downloading all of the footage? You further stated that there was a digital video recording system. It was an extremely large amount of data and would take several hours to complete. And that you would contact them directly when the download was completed. You have no independent recollection of that?
No, sir.
Did you tell Detective Basson that there was a room downstairs where you could watch these videos?
Not that I recall.
Did you tell them there was a room upstairs that they could watch these videos?
Not that I recall.
So you have no independent recollection of telling them any of this?
No, sir.
So are you saying that you never had this conversation with Detective Basson, or you just don't recall this conversation?
You're asking me if I had the conversation. I don't recall the conversation, sir. Could it have happened? Yes, sir. Could have happened. Could it not have happened? Yes, sir. Don't know.
You know that law enforcement wanted to see the videos, though, right? They asked you, we want to see the video.
Judge, I'm going to object. Ask and answer.
I don't recall, sir.
Just to-
Mr. Peck, you would agree with me, would you not, that you have been named in a lawsuit, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you're being sued, correct?
Yes, sir.
You along with the Cobb Theater.
Yes, sir.
You're being represented by Mr. Kelly.
Yes,
He's
sir.
your attorney, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever tell Detective Basson that you could speed up the video, slow down the video, and if it was time marked, you could go directly to that portion of the video?
I don't recall the conversation with Mr. Basson, so I don't know.
Now, you said that this could have been done back on January 13th of 2014, correct?
Yes, it could have been.
The viewing of it, who would have been responsible to show law enforcement the video and the segments of that video? You?
Could have been me, could have been my projection tech, could have been anyone that has access to it.
Okay, so it would have been you, right? Thomas Peck?
You're going to object. He said him and his tech. How many more times do we have to ask the same question?
Judge, I'm going through it. I want to find out him being Thomas Peck, and then I'm going to ask him who the tech is so we can get these names.
Fair enough. Proceed.
So it's you, right, Mr. Peck?
Myself or
Right.
Seth Gordon.
And obviously you were available, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Seth Gordon was available, correct?
I assume, yes. He was there.
Well, what do you mean you assume you were there, weren't you?
Yes, sir, I was there.
Well, was Mr. Gordon there or not?
Yes, sir, he was.
You indicated that at some point during the previews that there is, I guess, an announcement, no cell phones, and it runs for 20 to 30 seconds, and that's to enforce the no cell phone policy and for the guests to have a good experience, correct?
Correct.
Is that no cell phone policy enforced during the previews?
During the previews,
Yes.
we will ascertain, we'll walk through, but it's not like strictly enforced. We're more interested in the movies.
Okay, so if somebody has their phone out during a preview and they're scrolling or they're looking on the phone, well, one of the experts come up to them and say, hey, you need to put that phone away.
They'll ask them to, yes.
You just said it wasn't strictly enforced during the previews. Now, is it or isn't it?
We will give them a warning.
Okay. So, are they checking during the previews or not?
They try to, yes, sir.
So if somebody has their phone during the previews, they give them a warning.
Yes, sir.
Now, is that discretionary with the usher, or is that policy? Is that your policy?
It's supposed to be policy, yes, sir.
And I think that you indicated that should they not put their phone away, then obviously the usher would go to management and then you would address the issue.
That's correct.
Now, if somebody did not put their phone away during the previews, and it's during the previews, are you going to escort them or tell them you need to leave the theater now?
We'll warn them again. We'll ask them to please put their phone away still.
And if they don't put the phone away and it's still during the previews, are you going to escort them out or tell them to leave?
We may ask them to step out in the hallway and talk to them and explain to them why.
When you walked in the theater and you indicated that you had seen, I believe, Mr. Reeves, or you recognized him?
I didn't
Did you
recognize-
recognize him?
No.
At what point in time did you associate Mr. Reeves with the individual who had walked up to the counter?
Not until when I seen the video after the fact.
At that point in time, you realized that the gentleman that had been in the counter is the one that was involved in this incident, correct?
That's correct.
Did you memorialize that anywhere? Did you write it down? Did you
No.
write an incident report about this?
I think we did an incident report yet.
Did you do an incident report?
I don't recall. I really don't.
Well, you just said we did an incident report. So either you did or you didn't.
I don't recall if I did the incident report. No, I do not.
Okay, was there any other members of your staff that wrote down an incident report?
Nothing I'm aware of.
Do you remember seeing Mr. Reeves and he was wiping his brow, correct?
Yes.
Was there a young lady that was sitting next to him?
I didn't see anybody sitting there.
You indicated that there was an individual that had their hands on his shoulders. Did you find out who that individual was?
No.
You would agree with me, would you not, that you were having a lot of conversations with the corporate office, correct?
Yes.
And did they put limitations on you as far as cooperating with law enforcement?
No.
You had to check with them, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I checked with them, make sure, they just basically asked me what was going on in the situation, and I told them, the officers were in there, and they said, all right, well, just do whatever you can.
Did you ever tell Detective Basone or Detective Smith that your corporate office could access that video as well?
I don't recall.
You recall being interviewed by law enforcement, though, correct?
I remember being talked to, yeah, I don't know if I was interviewed officially, I don't know.
And is it your testimony that you were distracted because there was a problem with the sink and there was a problem with linens and you were more focused on that than you were about the issue with Mr. Reeves and what had just transpired in your theater, Tim?
No, that's not what I said.
That's not what you said?
No. You asked me what I recalled in conversations, and I recalled the conversations prior to the incident. I don't recall much after the incident because I was never been a part of it. It was surreal. It was,
You remember having conversations with Fred Myers?
I remember speaking with him, yes.
Who's Fred Myers?
At the time, he was our director of operations.
He was in charge of you, right?
Yes,
And do you remember speaking to Mr. Wellman?
yes.
And who's Mr. Wellman?
At the time, he was our COO.
Do you remember telling Fred Myers that Mr. Reeves was a rude old man?
No, I don't recall that.
I don't recall saying that to him.
No.
Yeah, no, Judge?
You may.
Mr. Andrews was in the process of downloading the videos, correct?
Yes.
Were you told by your corporate office not to let anyone get hands on those videos until they were downloaded?
I'm assuming they probably would have said something along those lines, yeah, stop me or whatever.
So you agreed, you were instructed by corporate office not to let law enforcement get those videos in, correct?
They might have, yeah.
Well, Mr. Peck, either they did or they didn't. Were you instructed not to let law enforcement get their hands on the video?
What you're asking me is you're asking me to communicate clearly what I knew at the time. At the time, sir, I was a little bit out of sorts in my mind. I don't recall everything from this situation. It is now 3 years removed. I'm trying to forget the situation, so I don't recall exact conversations. And I apologize for that. I'm not trying to be evasive.
Well, you clearly remember certain aspects of it, and you're not having any difficulties remembering it. Were you instructed by corporate not to give law enforcement the videos?
You say so, yes, sir.
I'm not saying so. I'm asking you.
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions, Judge.
Read it.
Mr. Peck, are you a law enforcement officer?
No, sir.
Outside the scope of cross.
Oh, no, I think it's very much inside the scope of cross, because he's indicated that this individual had control of things in that particular theater. I'm going to tie it up.
I'll overrule.
Have you had any training in law enforcement?
No, sir.
Were you investigating this particular incident?
No, sir.
Were you the individual that was responsible for preserving the evidence in this case?
No, sir.
Did you do anything, did you tell any police officer, you're not to go into this room?
No, sir.
Did you tell any police officer you're not to go to the IT office?
No, sir.
Did you tell any police officer you're not to go to my office and touch my computer?
No, sir. Not that I recall.
Did you impede law enforcement in any way in this particular case for them to do their job?
No, sir.
They had full access of your entire theater, is that not correct?
That's leading, Judge.
Did they have full access of your entire theater?
Absolutely.
Mr. Peck, are you lying today because you're being
Objection,
sued?
Judge. That's an improper question, Judge, and Mr. Escobar knows that.
Does the fact that you're being sued today, does that influence your testimony in any way?
No, sir.
You have a moment, Judge.
You know.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Peck, thank you.
Will this witness be released?
We're going to keep him under subpoena, but released for now.
All right, Mr. Peck, you still are subject to recall, so please answer your calls or return any calls that you get from either of the lawyers, and otherwise you're free to go for today, correct?
I will be out of the country starting this weekend.
This coming weekend?
I'm aware of that, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peck. You're free to go. Who's our next witness going to be?
Your Honor, the defense calls Michelle Simpson.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Go ahead, Mr. Escobar.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Simpson.
Good morning.
Ms. Simpson, please tell us your full name.
Dawn Michelle Simpson.
And Ms. Simpson, how are you employed?
I work for Centennial Bank.
And what do you do for that bank?
I'm a teller supervisor.
Okay, and how long have you had that occupation?
In banking, 26 years.
Okay, give us a little bit of history concerning your banking employment for those 26 years.
I started as a teller. I moved in onto operations. My bank was, I was laid off because my bank was bought out. So I then went on to Bay Cities Bank, was a teller there, and became teller supervisor. Went back to operations again, and now I'm back as a teller supervisor. Our bank was purchased by Centennial.
Okay, do you live here in this community?
I live in the Lutz, Land O'Lakes area.
Okay. I am going to direct your attention to January the 13th of 2014. And I'm going to show you initially some photos, and I'd like you to take a look at these photos and see if you recognize them. The photos are first of all, defendant's exhibit number 24 that is introduced into evidence. And I want you to take a look at this particular photo. And the timestamp on the bottom of the photo is 1/13/2014, 1345:49. And can you recognize that particular photo?
Yes.
And does that fairly and accurately depict for you that time sequence there at the Cobb Theater in this county?
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Would you tell the court what you were doing at the Cobb Theater on January the 13th of 2014?
I stopped there to look for movie posters, to see if they had movie posters for my daughter's TV room. She was doing a movie theme, and I was looking for posters.
Okay. And so you went to that counter to speak to that particular gentleman?
Yes.
Did you know that gentleman before?
No.
And so did you have a conversation with that gentleman?
A short conversation.
Okay. And what did you tell that gentleman?
Just that I was looking for movie posters, and he asked that I make a list of which particular movies I was looking for.
The photo that we're seeing now, is that a photo that's depicting your conversations with that gentleman?
Yes.
Okay. As you were having that conversation with that gentleman, did you notice someone else coming to the counter?
I noticed someone walking out, yes.
Okay. And do you see that particular individual in the court today?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please point him out? You see the gentleman with the maroon tie and the dark blazer, older gentleman?
Yes,
And is that the same gentleman that you see in the photo depicted up on the screen at this point in time?
yes.
Now, you finished your conversation?
Mhm.
Do you know how long your conversation was with Mr. Peck?
Not very long, it just, a couple minutes, not very
Okay.
long.
And during that time, did Mr. Reeves wait patiently for you to finish your conversation?
Yes,
Did you notice anything that would cause you any alarm about Mr. Reeves being there at that counter with you at that time?
no,
Now, I'm going to show you another picture. Do you recognize that picture? And that picture is at 1/13/2014 at 13/26/07, and that has a VTS number of VTS011VOB. Do you recognize that photo?
yes, it's when I moved to the side.
Okay, would you tell the court why it was that you moved to the side at that time?
I had a piece of paper and then he asked that I make a list of what particular movie posters I was looking for.
So that you could give that list to him and he
Yes.
could act accordingly and try to get those posters for you?
Yes,
Okay. Now, during that period of time, did you notice whether or not there was a conversation between Mr. Reeves and the gentleman there at the counter, Mr. Peck?
when I stepped aside to start making the list, then they started to speak.
Okay, do you know what the conversation was about?
Yes,
Objection calls for hearsay.
I'm not going to go there. Was there anything about that conversation that alarmed you?
no,
Can you tell the court what the appearance of Mr. Reeves was as he was having that conversation? Was he calm? Was he agitated? Was he mad? What?
no. He was very calm, polite. He waited for me to step aside and then had his conversation with the manager.
Okay. Did you think anything of it at that point in time?
No,
Just a normal conversation?
no, he wasn't upset.
Okay. And what did you do then?
I don't recall how much longer I was there. It was really only a minute or two. I knew they weren't going to have the movies that we were looking for, so I decided just to leave and not come back at a later date.
Okay. And so what happens later that day?
After I left the theater,
Yeah.
I walked to my car and proceeded to drive up to State Road 54 to head home. As soon as I got to 54, I guess it was a few seconds, maybe a minute or so, either a Pasco County deputy or a trooper, I don't recall, came by, passed me. And then a few seconds later, another deputy drove past me at a pretty high rate of speed. So I thought to myself, something has happened in the area. I didn't know it was a bank robbery or something.
Working for a bank?
Right. I knew it wasn't
Right.
normal speed for police officers.
Now, at some point in time later that day, did you figure out that an incident had happened, a shooting incident had happened at the cop theater?
Yes, I got home maybe 10 minutes later, and I turned on the TV and a bulletin was just going off. And so I got on my computer, and that's when I believe my homepage was Bay News 9, and that's when I saw the caption, what it said.
Okay. Now, at some point in time, did you communicate with someone else concerning the fact that you were there at that theater shortly before the incident?
Well, I had called my mom to tell her that I was just there, and she told me that I should call the police. I was like, I wasn't in the theater, but she said you should anyway. So I did. I called 911 and gave them my information.
Okay. And at some point in time thereafter, do you get interviewed by a law enforcement officer?
Yes,
Okay, and where does that interview take place?
it was over the phone.
It was over the phone.
Mhm.
And do you recall the name of that officer that interviewed you over the phone?
I don't.
And do you know how long or how short that interview was?
Just a few minutes.
Okay, do you recall what may have been asked?
Just what had happened, what I heard.
And did you tell them or tell that gentleman what you told us here today?
Yes.
No further questions.
his work to us tomorrow.
Good morning, Mrs. Simpson. How are you this morning? Now, isn't it true that you never observed Mr. Reeves indicate any kind of urgency in this matter?
I'm not sure what you mean.
When you saw him, let me ask you this, when you saw him walk up, did he have any problems walking?
I didn't see him walk up. I just felt somebody walk up to the counter. Could see out of my peripheral vision, but I didn't see him actually walk up.
And you overheard this conversation.
Part of it, yes.
Did he report any urgency in trying to get the general manager to go in right then and take care of this problem?
No, he was calm, and he just said, there's someone in the theater on their
Okay, I don't
phone.
want you to say what he said, but I mean, he was calm when he reported to the general manager. Is your
Yes.
testimony? Okay. He never reported that he felt threatened by this person, did he?
No.
Just, I'm gonna add, she's opening the door at that point in time. She can't have her cake and eat it too.
We're getting close.
She's asking for an opinion on a conversation that
What's
she's
the-
saying is hearsay.
What's the
What's his
objection?
objection?
That's the objection. It's hearsay. If it's hearsay in direct, it's hearsay on cross.
I'm not asking for what he said, but just how she took what he said to the general manager.
All right, you can ask obviously about his physical mannerisms, but if you're asking questions that are gonna directly call for a hearsay response, then I'll have to sustain. The rephrase.
Judge, if she wants the entire conversation, I'm more than glad for her to say it. I'm not objecting to the hearsay. What I'm objecting is the fact that if they object, we get the same rules.
How long was Mr. Reeves there at that counter, ma'am?
I'm not really sure. I left, so I don't know if he was still at the counter or not when I left. I didn't pay attention to that.
And you indicated that you did not actually hand the piece of paper in to the general manager at that point?
No,
And you didn't think anything of the conversation at that point when you got to 54 and saw two law enforcement cars driving quickly with their lights on?
no.
I have nothing for them.
No need for replay.
May this witness be released?
This witness may be released.
Ms. Simpson, you're free to go. Thank you. Houston, we're going to probably take a break. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute recess and then resume with that.
Thank you.
All rise.